good morning to all the dignitaries in front of me all and to all my students. First of all, I must say to host a 1 week long Constitution week instead of an art week long Constitution week instead of an arts week deserves an applause. So kudos to the team behind Natura Septimana. It is undoubtedly a wonderful initiation. I will be failing myself if I don't admit the fact that I feel very happy to be here amongst the young law aspirants to speak about the Constitution Day. I started my career as a lawyer at Calicut District Court Center. Those days, whenever there was leisure time, we would make a trip to Wayanad. Adivaram was a place where we used to stop for a tea. I was never aware that in Adivaram there was a college like this. This is a beautiful place and this is a beautiful campus. I'm really happy when I'm invited to this function because this is a nostalgic trip for me too. Thanks to the organizers and Advocate Faisal, who is the government in my court, through whom the organizers met me and invited me to this function. So without much ado, to let me fulfill the task I'm assigned with today. This is to speak to you all about Constitution Day. We all know that the Constitution Day is celebrated on 26th November every year. Now my question is very simple in fact. Why celebrate the Constitution Day? I mean, what is the important about the Constitution that we celebrate it every year? Now, I don't know about you all, but when I was a student of law, I was not someone who made a big deal of the Constitution Day, and this is something that I regret. As a student of law, you all must understand the importance of Constitution. You all must know the struggles that our forefathers went through to give us the Constitution in the shape and form as we have it today. You must know this not just for the sake of knowing it, but to learn the law from a new angle, an angle of pride and passion, and to fight for the rights the Constitution has guaranteed to us without fear or doubt and with passion. To claim the reservation you rightly deserve without shying away from it. For this, we need to look into the history of Constitution. Now, when we look into the history of Indian Constitution, the period in which the Constitution was drafted becomes important. At this point in this session, I will be mainly focusing on the period in which the Constitution was drafted. This is because you all know everything else like the Government of India Act 1935 and so on. And in case you didn't know, these are things that are available in the law books or any other GK or political science textbook. Whereas the circumstances in which the Constitution was drafted, I feel is not stressed enough in any of the books, as a result of which the passion and the seriousness with which the law students must view or study is missing in them. The time in which Constitution was drafted was in the late 1940s. It was written under the extraordinary difficult condition because the late 1940s resulted in the partition of India and the Pakistan, which led to the displacement of millions of people on both sides of the border. The partition was also accompanied by mass deaths, devastation, violence, brutality, etc. Amidst these horrific events, a bunch of people on this side of the border, which consisted mostly of men and some women, came together and drafted our Constitution. With this and several other aims, our dual purpose assembly, that is the Constituent Assembly, which was a parliament by morning and a constituent body in the afternoon, drafted our enduring founding instrument, the Indian Constitution. A document, a truly deserving supreme law of the land, that would remain relevant not just for the present, but also would be meaningful for future generations to come. The Constituent Assembly debates is in five, Lok Sabha Secretariat has published the Constituent Assembly debates in 5 books. I hope it is available in your library. How many of you seen this debate book? Can you raise your hand? Anybody? No. Is it available here? Yes, you should go through it. When you study an article in the Constitution, you should also read the discussion in the Constituent Assembly which lead to that article. Then the study would become thrilling. Now, okay, we made a constitution, setting aside the difficult circumstances in which our constitution was made. You might think that what is the big deal in making a constitution? After all, 806 nations had made a constitution of their own during the period of 1786 to 2005. From these 806 countries, if we take an average of 146 countries, the average time taken for these countries to make their constitution is a little over 16 months. And of those, the average constitution would last only a couple of years before it was either replaced, withdrawn, or there was a revolution or a military coup. We, on the other hand, at almost 73 years as a constitutional democracy, is an exception to the above statistics. We have with us an instrument that has survived for so long. Now, the next question that might come to some of your mind might be, why is the survivance of the Constitution for a long time so important? And the answer is, it is not just important, but also rare for a Constitution to survive for so long. When I make this statement, it becomes the reason, like, for example, let's take France, a country with great constitution-making tradition. This country, with its great constitution-making tradition, has over 6 constitutions. Yesterday, when I asked my research assistant to check this in order to prepare this speech, she told me that she came across a Wikipedia page, and the first line of the page under the topic Constitution of France reads as follows. This article is about the current constitution, and further it says, to see a more general article, see the list of constitution of France. On clicking further, you will be taken to a different page which shows a list of constitution that France had. Then there is Pakistan. On 26 January 1950, our constitution came into force. Pakistan, who got independence on the same date as India on 15th August 1947, by the 1947 Independence Act, was yet to frame its constitution, and ultimately, when Pakistan finally drafted and approved its constitution in 1956, 6 years after India became a republic, it was abrogated in 1958 by a military coup, and a second constitution was adopted in 1962, and this constitution was suspended in 1969 and abrogated in 1972. After this, again, a constitution was made in 1973, which was held in abeyance in 1977. However, 1973 constitution was further restored. The condition in China is also not that different. The People's Republic of China superseded 3 constitutions to arrive at its current constitution. The American Constitution, however, existed for over 200 years, and this is often celebrated in America. I often feel that the Indian Constitution does not get the credit that it deserves, and by that I mean the Constituent Assembly does not get the credit that it deserves for being wise enough to put together a text that will be untouchable for generations. This text or the Constitution then made has spoken for all of us, that is, from my father's generation to my generation to your generation, and it will speak for the generation yet to come. Of course, there were n numbers of amendments to the Constitution. After all, the amending prowess in the Constitution is one that makes our Constitution this flexible. But remember, the basic structure of the Constitution cannot be touched even by the Parliament because of the decisions of the apex court. I also feel that the Supreme Court does not get enough credit for taking the business of interpreting the Constitution seriously. We may agree or disagree with the decisions of the Supreme Court, but we must agree that it is a hard-working court that hears enormous number of cases and tries to keep those cases within the four walls of Constitution. Now, if you ask the reason why our Constitution survived for so long, it is simple because the drafters had a vision and the court see through that vision, and Parliament tries to stay within the four walls of that vision. So with the 806 constitutions of different countries, the average constitution lasting for 16 years, with the 73 years of history to our constitution, we have already set the benchmark high. At 73 years, the Constitution of India continues to be the core feature of India's identity. Now, you all know that on 1947, by the Indian Independence Act, independence was announced and India and Pakistan were partitioned. So what is in the indigenous project? I would say indigenous because the Indian Constitution was fully made in India, that forced the people of this new post-colonial country to sign up for this Constitution. The reason of this, I would say, is that a spirit was created by the framers of the Constitution, a spirit of inclusiveness, and this is evident from the method India adopted in including provisions in the Constitution. Unlike in South African Constitution, where most of the provisions were voted in, that is, if the majority approves the matter, what the minority says, the provision would be included in their Constitution. In India, the method adopted was that of unanimity. That is, when a provision is proposed, the members of the Constituent Assembly would listen to those who oppose and include their concern in the Constitution. This is partly the reason why the Indian Constitution is lengthy, and it has to be lengthy because we are new state, a diverse state with a lot of constraints and challenges. One other reason why the people signed up to the Constitution is because the drafters were a hard-working bunch of people who had a clear vision of what they wanted themselves, the society and the country to be. The drafter wanted us and themselves to be a better people, better society, and better country. This is evident from the amendments we made on the castes by including special provisions and the equality clauses, which is seen in Article 14, 15, and 16 of the Constitution. These articles are the reason why those who are equally situated will have the benefit of formal equality and those who are unequally situated. That is, those who have experienced historical disadvantage, discrimination across centuries will have the benefit of substantive equality. There are also special provisions for the representation of SC/ST in political constituencies. These, I would say, are unique and a radical vision to have. Imagine a country that was once divided in the name of caste is now making reservation for the benefits of those who are discriminated in the name of caste. The drafters clearly wanted a document that believes that each Indian will respect others' dignity, that we will not be a country for one religion, instead we will be a country for all religion, that we will not be a country dominated by tradition elites as in the past, instead we will be a country that makes reparations in further, which is our present. These are also studies as to why India has successful constitution. Granville Austin, in his study on what accounted for India's successful constitution making process, says that the reason for India's successful constitution is because many members of the Indian Constituent Assembly participated in the freedom movement and has served time in prison and were not long out of prison. He felt that they were idealistic enough to put together a constitution such as this. But most importantly, he was of the opinion that they had a political goodwill that in fact convinced the people around them, both inside and outside the assembly, to sign up to the project of we the people that the constitution envisages. However, Ubendra Bakshi has a different telling. How, according to him, the Indian National Congress was a well-organized hierarchical organization that had decision-making structures and had ways of decision handling. And it was this organization hierarchy that ensured that the constitution got made. So there were ways to make sure that the folks within the Congress voted for certain drafts. There are many tellings as to why we have such a fascination and radical constitution. Amongst one of these telling as to why we have a long and fascination constitution is that we took it, borrowed it from everywhere, but there are other finding which states that a part of reason why we have these interesting provisions is because the work did not start in 1946. It started in early 1900s because the Indian National Congress, in fact, had a tradition where the British colonial government would pass a law or a legislation or a draft like the Government of India Act 1919, and the Congress would respond by asking for more civil and political rights like the right to life, right to liberty, freedom of press and association. See, the Swaraj Bill in 1895, the Swaraj Bill in 1895 by Bal Gangadhar Tilak, a trained lawyer, states that we must have the freedom of speech, press, and equality before the law, and all this was in 1895. The Indian National Congress even maintained a system of white papers for demanding more rights, a right that would mean dignity for all, rather than the draconian legislations passed by the government. So, on one hand, when we had the movements like the Satyagraha, Quit India movement, with the people on the streets for these movements, on the other hand, there was this bit of work that was happening. Thus, the takeaway on how to make a constitution from our Constituent Assembly would be you need a nationalistic movement, not just on the streets, but you also need a nationalistic movement to read the draconian law. In other words, we must be brave, not only inside the courtroom, but also outside the courtroom to make sure that the laws passed conform to the values we hold in our Constitution. Lastly, I would like to take this opportunity to speak a few words on Dr. B.R. Ambedkar because I believe no Constitution Day would be complete without paying gratitude to him. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, a student who would not get beyond the last row because of the caste, grew up and drafted our Constitution. Now, what is remarkable about Ambedkar is that despite discrimination, despite various other challenges, he did not shut himself. Despite the various other challenges, he did not shut himself out. He fought very hard to make the Constitution as we see it today. The Indian Constitution and its drafting process are often seen as synonymous with Ambedkar. He is often referred to as the father of the Constitution and is probably the most well-known of all Constituent Assembly members. Ambedkar became a key figure in India's constitution-making process due to the offices he held and his intervention and speeches in the Assembly. He was the chairman of the Assembly's most crucial committee, the drafting committee, and a member of other important committees. As drafting committee chairman, he had to defend the draft constitution which the committee prepared and therefore intervened in nearly every debate. On behalf of the Scheduled Caste Federation Party, the Ambedkar wrote and submitted states and minorities to the Constituent Assembly's subcommittee on fundamental rights, a mini constitution in itself. States and minorities framed strong constitutional protection for the scheduled caste community. Ambedkar's interventions and speeches on various aspects of the Constitution were insightful, well-reasoned, and scrupulously researched. This won him the support and respect of other members of the Assembly who allowed him to lead the constitution-making project. With this, I would like to conclude by reminding you all that there is another key constituency that interprets and defends the Constitution, like the courts and the Constituent Assembly, and that is the members of the bar. I know as a student of law, you all have various options available as to what to do with your professional life. But I can guarantee you that the life at the bar is immensely satisfying and deeply rewarding. Thus, I take this opportunity to openly invite you to be a litigator and to uphold the constitutional values. Thank you. Jai Hind.